Austin City Council's response to Dr. Paul Connett.
What was really disturbing was that after Dr. Paul Connett testified, I testified, and Heather Fazio, a local activist, all testified about fluoride, how we don't want it in our water, we think it could damage children, and Dr. Paul Connett laid out a bunch of science about why it was bad. City Council didn't even deem it necessary to respond to any of us. Dr. Paul Connett came all the way from New York to speak to Austin City Council, and they didn't even respond to the science that he presented and really the evidence that he showed that we could really be harming people in Austin, especially children and those with kidney disease, by putting fluoride in the water. Now, Dr. Cole, you've known Dr. Paul Connett.
Yep, for about 5 years now. He's part of a medical group that I'm in, International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. Paul, this is his life. I mean, if you go to his website, which is the fluoridealert.org, or the FAN network, it's amazing what he's compiled. It is truly the greatest website to find out everything you possibly can on fluoride and water fluoridation.
What is that website again?
Fluoridealert.org. Really, really good. It's called the FAN network, which is the Fluoride Action Network. Anyway, yeah, we invited Paul down here, got it organized, drove him around, had him speak, do some book signings. He wrote an amazing book with 2 other authors on this. And there's a YouTube video out there right now that shows our mayor, who's not even listening to his speech and is actually talking to somebody else at the time. It was pretty disrespectful because this guy is an expert. He's coming here to present on his own time. I don't think we paid him anything to come down here. And you know, this is what he does. And I do find it sad that we just sort of discounted that whole meeting.
That really was a shame that they weren't even really paying attention when Dr. Paul Connett was speaking. Now, for those of you watching at home, I'm going to show you the video clip of Dr. Connett's testimony and the mayor really not paying attention at all. So here's that clip.
Spelly Mikla have written a whole book indicating that the science does not support the effectiveness of fluoridation, and there are very many health concerns. And basically, there is no adequate margin of safety between the levels which are causing harm as documented in this national...
One issue we haven't really discussed are the environmental risks associated with water fluoridation. Dr. Neil Carman, PhD in environmental science, is one of the most influential members of the anti-fluoride movement here in Austin. And he's spoken to City Hall a couple times. And one of the things that he warned about was the dangers associated with the chemical we use to fluoridate our water in Austin, fluorosilicic acid. Specifically, he said that if there were a spill of this chemical in either while it was in transport or during the unloading of it, or if there were an accident of the tanker, that a spill of fluorosilicic acid could be really damaging to the environment as well as to the health of citizens exposed to it. Thankfully, there hasn't been an accident in Austin yet, but recently there was a spill of fluorosilicic acid in Rock Island, Illinois. And this chemical is so dangerous and corrosive that it actually ate through the concrete of the water treatment plant. So here's a news clip of that spill in Rock Island, Illinois.
First tonight, hazmat crews from all across our area responded to a chemical leak this afternoon in Rock Island. The chemical was so strong that it was burning through the concrete there. News 8's Christy Mergenthal has the latest.
It was just before 1 o'clock Thursday afternoon when hazmat crews were called to the Rock Island water treatment plant for a chemical spill coming from this tanker truck.
It's a corrosive agent that the water treatment plant uses, and there was an overflow that caused spillage out from the building onto this driveway behind me.
As plant employees evacuated, crews began suiting up, working quickly to stop the leak that had begun eating through concrete.
And they stopped the leak using some earthen berms with dirt, sand, and some commercial boom equipment, and had it contained pretty much to this facility within a short amount of time.
The chemical hydrofluorosilicic acid is used to add fluoride to the plant's water. Although it poses a burn risk to skin, those living nearby were in no immediate danger.
There's no inhalation hazard at all. So there was no need for us to evacuate any residents around the area.
After several hours, crews were able to clean up the leak, allowing operations to return to normal.
They had to cordon off the area, obviously, but as far as the treatment of the water and the amount of water being used by the public, there's no effect on that at all.
In Rock Island, Christy Mergenthal, WQAD Quad Cities, News 8.
Thank you, Christy. Investigators tonight still haven't given an official estimate on just how much of that chemical spilled out.
For a chemical spill coming from this tanker truck.
Hydrofluorosilicic acid is an extremely dangerous and deadly chemical that's used in Austin. There was no mention, for example, of the material safety data sheets of how dangerous this chemical is. Number two is the fact that hydrofluorosilicic acid is also one of the most dangerous chemicals transported in Austin if there were to be a serious accident and a breaching of the container on the highway or the city streets. And a lot of people don't know the hazards associated with a spill and a breaching of one of these tankers that goes right through the city of Austin and to the treatment plants.
In the summer of 2008, I was doing a lot of research on the internet, and that's when I first learned about the issue of water fluoridation and the potential harmful effects it might be having on the population. I didn't really know what to do with that information, so I did the only thing I knew how to do, which was bother my friends and my family. I would call them all the time, tell them about the most recent article I read or video I watched, and it got me nowhere. It wasn't until my roommate told me about a local activist group called Texans for Accountable Government that my effort towards ending water fluoridation actually started to have any effect. I met them down at City Hall and testified with them in front of the Environmental Board, talking about the potential dangers of fluoride and recent science behind it. And it was John Bush, Executive Director of Texans for Accountable Government, that really pushed me into taking a more active role in this movement. He told me that I should call some city representatives and set up meetings with city council members and fluoride experts so that the scientists can help share their information with the elected officials so that the elected officials can actually make a decision or have some more information about this issue. And that's also when I met members of Fluoride Free Austin. Ray Nadler-Olnick, Linda Green, and Dr. Neil Carmen, and Dr. Griffin Cole have just been outstanding activists on this issue. I'd like to thank them for their tireless work. Ray and Linda are down at City Council almost every week testifying to the dangers of fluoridation and providing new science, and has been their tireless effort that has been the energy behind this movement that has gotten us so far. And it's been the science of experts like Dr. Carmen and Dr. Cole which have been the data behind this movement. So I'd like to thank all those people, and especially John Bush and my roommate James for pushing me and getting me involved in this very important health freedom movement. Now, something that was really cool for me was having the opportunity to speak directly after Dr. Paul Connett at City Council. So here I am with not nearly the expertise that he has, speaking to City Council about fluoride.
My name is Robert Love, and I'm a student at the LBJ School of Public Affairs, and I'm a member of the student group Social, Health, and Economic Policymakers. I would like you to consider an important question. Is Austin city water safe for our children? I think you and I agree that the welfare of the children of Austin is very important and something that deserves our attention. Austin Health and Human Services has done their best to protect infants in Austin from the dangers of water fluoridation. The Center for Disease Control and the American Dental Association have both issued warning to parents, telling them not to use fluoridated water for baby formula. 3 months ago, Austin Health and Human Services issued that same warning to parents of Austin, telling them not to use fluoridated water for infant formula. Councilmember Shade, recently you came to the LBJ school and you said that your dentist and doctor warned you not to use fluoridated water for your infant's formula. And I can only assume that, as a responsible parent, you took every step necessary to protect your child from fluoride, as I assume most parents in Austin would. The problem is, not every parent in Austin knows the dangers that water fluoridation poses to their children. More concerning is that fluoride might be harming the brains of our children. Dr. Connett mentioned that there are many animal studies that show that fluoride crosses the blood-brain barrier and that the blood-brain barrier in babies is not fully formed. Infants are very vulnerable to toxins in their environment, and we should take every step necessary to protect the brains of these developing minds. And there are over 23 studies that show an association between ingestion of fluoride and lower IQ. I have two recommendations. First, please warn all Austin parents of the dangers of water fluoridation and the dangers it poses to infants. This can be done simply by putting a warning at the bottom of the water utility bill. Second, I think we all agree right now that we are unsure of what effects water fluoridation has on the brains and bodies of our children. I urge you to move forward with the Environmental Board's recommendation and investigate fluoride. This is a complicated and difficult issue, but the citizens of Austin need to know what effect fluoride is having on our children.
What do you think are some steps that people can take in their own communities to fight water fluoridation?
I think they can maybe follow our lead as far as getting organized with the grassroots group, constantly showing up at city council meetings, because there's always a time where there's a citizen, part where they can talk about whatever issues concerning them. You can show up at every meeting if you have the time. I mean, it's tough. I mean, I can't do it. But as you mentioned, there are some good people here in our group that do. So a grassroots organization, get it growing, maybe get some pieces in the newspaper, whatever you can to try to get the word out there, because most people don't even know about this, Rob. That's the deal. We're trying to get the city just to put a warning on the water bill, large, saying, hey, don't use this for infant formula. Just a simple line like that. Do not use the tap water for infant formula. That would already get people going, why? And that's all we're asking for.
One thing I think that's really important is that people need to realize that medical science is not perfect. Recently, for example, medical professionals and doctors thought that ulcers were caused by stress. It wasn't until 2005 when Robin Warren and Barry Marshall won the Nobel Prize for their discovery that ulcers are actually caused by bacteria that previously held notion was reversed. Now everyone accepts that ulcers are caused by bacteria. Now, in the example of fluoride, water fluoridation began in 1945. It wasn't until 1966 that the Surgeon General's warning came out saying that cigarettes were dangerous. That's how old the science was in America when fluoridation was promoted as being healthy for us. So on the issue of water fluoridation, I'd like to encourage you to do your own research and share this information with others and get active locally. It's not until citizens are loud enough and well informed that our elected officials are actually going to pay attention and do something about this issue. If you're interested, just to get you started, some great places to look for information are, if you Google fluoride, one of the first hits should be Dr. Paul Connett's paper, 50 Reasons to Oppose Water Fluoridation. It's heavily cited, it's got a lot of scientific information in it, and that'll put you on your way to learning about the dangers of fluoridation. If you're more of a visual person, if you go onto YouTube, type in fluoride deception, you'll get a great video by Christopher Bryson, who wrote a very interesting book called The Fluoride Deception. It reads like a murder mystery novel. Lots of great information in there as well, if you'd rather watch something than read. Dr. Cole, thank you so much for coming today. It's been a real pleasure having you on the air, and it's been great having you share all this information with the viewers and listeners out there. I'd like to close with a quote by Dr. Robert Carlton, a former EPA scientist. He said that water fluoridation is the greatest fraud of the 20th century. Thank you for tuning in to Lone Star Politics. I'm your host, Dr. Love. Stay skeptical, stay informed, and say no to forced medication.
Next week, learn how the government is spying on U.S. citizens.